He got up before I could finish my explanation, so I remarked in therapy, "I still think about my ex during sex." That's the ideal way to sum up my marriage. I strive to be honest, and Steven treats me like a piece of trash because of it. I'm going to tell you how one foolish therapy session essentially blew up my entire life. I'm on page 29. I've been seeing Dr. Winters, my therapist, for the past 6 months or so. Given that I've been aloof or whatever, Steven thought it would be a good idea. Until last Thursday, when Dr. Winters pushed me to discuss intimate issues in my marriage. The sessions were going well, largely covering superficial topics like work stress and my mom being a pain. "What's going through your mind during those moments with Steven?" she inquired. I'm not sure why, but I simply blurted out that I occasionally think about Jordan, my ex. As if I had just told her that I enjoy chocolate ice cream better than vanilla, Dr. Winters nodded. In the meantime, I'm sitting there having a breakdown because I've never told anyone, not even myself, that. In response to her request for further details, I clarified that it wasn't always the case, only during periods of monotony or when Steven was being unusually dull in bed. God knows I didn't want Jordan back, but occasionally those memories came in handy when things weren't exciting. Steven was bugging me that evening for overspending on shoes I seldom ever wear. When he had the audacity to bring up our connection problems and how I appeared tuned out during sex, we were already at odds. Something broke inside of me. Are you curious as to why I appear to be checked out? Because Jordan is on my mind occasionally. All right. I said that to hurt him and silence him about the dumb shoes. Steven's expression suggested that I had given him a physical slap. Hold on, I didn't mean, I began, but he wouldn't let me finish. Steven simply picked up his keys from the counter and left right away. I contacted him about 15 times and got no response. You're seriously not going to let me explain? I texted, but got no response. So dramatic. At least I was telling the truth. He's always calling for more honesty, isn't that right? I immediately called my friend Trina, downplaying my words and focusing on Steven's exaggerated reaction. Trina concurred that his behavior was very out of character. When she said, "Men can't handle the truth," I felt validated. I started talking about how Steven had misinterpreted and overreacted when he eventually returned home the following evening, appearing to have not slept. For good measure, I even shed a few tears, but something had changed. Steven simply gave me this blank stare and said, "I think I need some space to figure out if this is still working for me." I realized that I had made a huge calculation error, and the worst part, I could already hear that tiny voice in my head trying to blame him for this. The following morning, when Steven was gone once more, I unlocked my dresser's bottom drawer and took out everything I had saved from my relationship with Jordan was in the shoebox that was concealed under my winter sweaters, concert tickets, small notes, and a few pictures. Jordan is typically thought of as this ideal man who escaped. To correct the record, he was a nightmare. In my early 20s, we dated for 2 years, and it was an absolute mess. After going missing for days, he would return to my flat around 2 in the morning, expecting me to drop everything. He would be critical of my friends, my appearance, and my goals. During one argument, he even tossed my phone across the room. However, there was something about him that was both intense and unpredictable. It resembled an addiction. Even if the lows made me think about crashing my car off a bridge, the highs were stratospheric. However, Steven has never made me feel as though I might pass away from either happiness or grief. He's simply stable and reliable. I was still getting over Jordan 3 years ago when we met at my friend's wedding. Jordan lacked the kindness, attention to detail, and financial stability that Steven possessed. I picked up my phone and launched Instagram. Jordan's profile appeared in my search history before I could stop myself. His most recent post had him in a club, his arm around a small blonde. I felt sick to my stomach from that old twist of jealousy. I messaged Jordan before I could second-guess myself. "Hey, stranger, how's life treating you?" It was straightforward, informal, and completely out of place considering my marriage at the moment. Well, look who it is. Life's good. Are you still with that accountant guy?" he said, not even remembering what Stephen had done, and my phone rang almost instantly. Even though he works in software sales rather than accounting, I still got a tiny thrill when I saw Jordan's name on my screen. I skillfully danced around the idea that my marriage was in trouble for the next hour as I messaged him. I was almost relieved when Stephen texted to let me know he would be home late. It allowed me to spend more time in my fantasy world, where Jordan and I had somehow managed to keep our little secret. I immediately ended my conversation with Jordan and put on my most worried wife face when Stephen eventually got home that evening. I attempted to seem honest as I said, "Listen, can we talk about what happened?" Stephen took a seat at our kitchen table and said, "I think you misunderstood what I was trying to say." He kept a cautious distance. "I'm listening." This was my opportunity to make amends and truly express my regret for causing him pain. Instead, he was making me feel criticized for being vulnerable, so I started off with a well-crafted speech about how therapy is meant to be a safe place for expressing complex feelings. "Would you be okay if I told you I fantasize about my ex during our most intimate moments?" Stephen inquired quietly. "That's different," I yelled, immediately taking offense. "How?" I sensed that I was losing control. "Because you don't understand the context." His words, "I think I understand perfectly." I lied when I said, "You're not happy with me, with us. You compare me to him." "Did I not pick you? You and I got married." Stephen's voice sounded more resigned than angry when he said, "Sometimes I wonder why." I changed my strategy and reached across the table for his hand. "Please, baby, that was only one dumb remark. You are aware of Jordan's toxic nature." Even as I said it, it seemed hollow. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me." Between us, I understood exactly why I had brought up Jordan. Occasionally, I did miss the intensity and the pandemonium. Stephen's unwavering devotion occasionally made me feel imprisoned rather than loved. I proposed that we undergo couples therapy because I needed to reclaim control of the situation, not because I wanted to resolve our problems. After a lengthy silence, Stephen said, "All right, we could give it a shot." As soon as Stephen left, for work the following morning, I picked up my phone and looked for messages from Jordan. The last one said, "Do you recall that lake house weekend? Sometimes I still think about it." I typed back, my heart pounding. How could I forget? I was referring to the sunrise we had seen from the deck when I said, "Best view in the state?" But I left it open-ended enough for him to interpret it differently. I juggled booking our first couples therapy session, sending romantic texts, repairing damage with Stephen, and having progressively inappropriate chats with Jordan throughout the day. It felt as though two distinct worlds were present. The therapy session for our first couple was uncomfortable. I interrupted Stephen before he could say anything. I looked directly at Dr. Winters as if we were plotting and explained, "We had a miscommunication about something I mentioned in my individual see-saw-me session." Stephen took it extremely personally when I tried to be open about some complex emotions. Dr. Winters turned to Stephen and nodded. "And what would you say transpired?" Stephen inhaled deeply. "Paige informed me that she considers her ex when having sex, not as something she did in the past, but rather as something she does now." "It wasn't just the remark," Stephen said. "It was the way you stated it, as if it were a weapon in a dispute about something else." My cheeks began to flush. "That is unfair. I was only being truthful." "Honesty and cruelty are not the same thing," Stephen said. Communication isn't just about what we say, but how and when we choose to say it, Dr. Winters interrupted. You see how Stephen might have been offended by the time and style of your disclosure page. I sensed that they were both waiting for me to take responsibility. I suppose the timing wasn't perfect, I grudgingly admitted. But shouldn't Stephen value the fact that I'm telling him the truth? Relationships should be about being honest, right? Then I reached for Stephen's hand in the automobile. You do realize that wasn't too bad? I believe it was rather fruitful. Stephen did not return the pressure, but he did permit contact. It's an initial step, he stated ambiguously. I prepared his favorite meal that evening and had sex with him for the first time in weeks. I closed my eyes the entire time and concentrated on being in the moment, preventing my thoughts from straying to Jordan. It was like work. As soon as Stephen's door closed the following morning, I picked up my phone and looked for messages from Jordan. Each of the 3 new messages was more ominous than the one before it. Over the course of the following week, I alternated between talking to Jordan in an increasingly improper manner and trying to control the damage with Stephen. The therapy session with our second couple proceeded similarly to the first. My heart skipped a beat as Dr. Winters said, "Paige, have you had any contact with Jordan recently?" "No," I lied with ease. "That's all in the past." Stephen appeared more aloof than usual that evening. He gently disengaged when I attempted to make physical contact. I think I'll turn in early. Jordan sent me a message on my phone as I was listening. To him, get ready for bed. In your neighborhood tomorrow for a meeting. Coffee? My fingertips lingered over the screen. There was a clear boundary being crossed here. Express yourself on 3rd, 2 p.m. was what I typed, even though I knew I should say no. I had been calling in sick to work more frequently lately, so I did likewise the following day. Before deciding on a casual yet attractive dress that Jordan had once praised, I spent 2 hours getting dressed and changed 4 times. Jordan felt as though he had traveled back in time when he entered the coffee shop. He still smiled with confidence and swagger. He sat in the seat opposite from me and said, "Well, look at you. Marriage looks good on you." Unconsciously twisting my wedding band, I giggled. He responded with the sneer that used to make me crazy, saying, "Stop it." "What? I'm just stating facts," he said. "So how is married life treating you? Your accountant's still taking good care of you." "He's in software. Sales," I instantly amended. Jordan arched an eyebrow and said, "And yeah, things are fine." As I had told myself innumerable times over the years, "Not everything needs to be exciting," I murmured. "Just fine? That doesn't sound very exciting." Jordan remarked, "Maybe," bending closer, "but some things should be right." I didn't flinch when his hand brushed mine across the table. I paused only a moment before accepting his suggestion that we go somewhere more private. We arrived at the flat of his friend. As usual, Jordan was in transition, and one event led to another. After that, reality hit me hard while I was resting next to my ex in a stranger's bed. What had I done? Jordan's informal, "see you around," reverberated in my ears as I hastily left, making some excuse about having to be home before Stephen. Stephen surprised everyone by delivering takeout when he arrived home at 6:30. When he said, "I thought you might not feel up to cooking since you weren't feeling well," the guilt struck me like a blow to the body. I promised myself that it would be a one-time error and that I would break up with Jordan and get married again. Even though I had written a note telling Jordan that we could no longer communicate, I never sent it. I sailed through the next days in a daze of self-justification and guilt. I pushed myself into being the ideal wife, suggesting a weekend getaway, cooking Stephen's favorite dishes, and making physical contact. I was dreading the approaching 3rd treatment session. What if Dr. Winters was aware of my actions? On the Morning of our appointment, however, Stephen gave us a call. "I don't think I can make it today. There's an emergency with a client. Can we reschedule?" "Of course," I replied with a wave of relief. "Everything okay?" "Just a technical issue that needs immediate attention. I'll call you later." Something had changed by the time Stephen got home that night. He appeared anxious and preoccupied. He continued to check his phone and hardly touched his dinner. Later, my curiosity overcame me while Stephen was taking a shower. To my astonishment, his phone was unlocked when I picked it up from the bedside table. I clicked on the message thread, anticipating work correspondence, and saw multiple notifications from a person named Amy L. Rather, I discovered dozens of emails from the previous 2 weeks. Though it began quite professionally, the discussion had taken a more intimate turn. According to the latest message, "Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, same place." My thoughts were racing when I hung up the phone after Stephen's response. "Yes, 1 p.m. works. Thanks again for today." Did Stephen also cheat? I was aware of the irony of my response, but I was powerless to stop myself. I was sitting stiffly on the edge of the bed when Stephen emerged from the restroom. Without introducing myself, I inquired, "Who's Amy?" Stephen stopped. "What? Amy L?" "The person you've been texting. The client emergency today. Who is she?" His face changed from one of surprise to one of resignation. "You went through my phone. Answer the question." On his side of the bed, Stephen took a heavy seat. "She's our therapist's colleague, another therapist in the same practice." I was surprised by this. "What? Why are you meeting with another therapist?" "Because I needed objective advice," Stephen muttered. "About us, about what to do." I was furious, conveniently forgetting my own much bigger transgression, and asked, "So you've been talking to some stranger about our marriage behind my back?" "Yes," acknowledged Stephen, "because I don't know if I can do this anymore, Paige." I felt like I was physically struck by their words. He waved between us and said, "Do what? Talk to me? This? Us? I've been trying, I really have. But ever since that night when you mentioned Jordan, I can't stop thinking about it, about whether you're really happy with me or if you've been settling all along." I objected, "That's ridiculous." "It was one stupid comment," Stephen said. "It wasn't just the comment," as he turned to face me. "It was seeing how easily you could hurt me, and how you've been since then, doing all the right things but never actually addressing the real issue." Even though I already understood, I insisted, "What real issue?" He said simply, "Whether you actually want to be with me or if you're going to be thinking about—" Naturally, he was referring to what may have been with him. "Jordan," I argued, "that I wanted to be with you. It was poisonous. The best thing that has ever happened to me is you." Even as I said the words, they sounded hollow. Stephen replied, "I think I need some time away, some space to work out what I really want." He stood up and took a little duffel bag, which I hadn't realized was already partially packed, out of the closet. He had been planning this, so it wasn't an impulsive choice. I blurted out, "I slept with Jordan." With his back to me, Stephen froze. His face was empty when he turned around at last, not heartbroken or angry, just empty. I said, "Last week." When he inquired in a low voice, "It was a mistake. It meant nothing." "Stop," Stephen cut in. "Just stop. How long have you been in contact with him?" Once more, using a calm voice, Stephen requested, "Since that night after our fight." Slowly, Stephen nodded. "So while we've been in therapy, while I've been agonizing over whether you're happy with me, you've been talking to him, meeting him, and sleeping with him. Weekly." "It wasn't planned," I said. "It just happened." "Things don't just happen. Paige, you made choices, multiple choices, every step of the way. I muttered. I'm sorry, and for the first time I meant it. Yeah, answered Stephen, holding his backpack over his shoulder. Me too. He approached the bedroom door and stopped. I'll be in touch about next steps. Please don't contact me. For a while. I need space to process this. And he disappeared. His car started in the driveway after I heard the front door close. My husband had abruptly left me. Shell-shocked, I sat on our bed until Jordan's message on my phone buzzed. Free tonight? Could use some company. Something snapped inside of me at that very instant. I blocked his number before he could reply, then curled up on Stephen's side of the bed and cried until I was completely dry. I replied back, no, and don't contact me again. This was a mistake. I called my buddy Trina the following morning to invite her over. An hour later, she showed up with cookies and coffee. I told her everything: the affair, the therapy reveal, the reunion with Jordan, and the finding and leaving of Stephen. I was hoping for understanding or at least sympathy. Trina, on the other hand, gave me a disappointed, almost disgusted look. Are you serious right now? He cheated on Stephen with Jordan of all people. I know it was a mistake, I countered. Trina cut her off. No, Paige, it's really not complicated. You had a good man who loved you, and you threw it away for a guy who treated you like garbage. And the worst part is you're still acting like this just happened to you, like you're the victim here. Her remarks were like a blow to my head. My cheerleader had always been Trina. I said, I thought you were my friend, in pain. I am your friend, she said in response. That's why I'm telling you the truth instead of what you want to hear. I was in a trance for the next few days, swinging between real regret and self-pity. I gave Dr. Winters a call and set up an urgent meeting where I eventually revealed the whole truth. When I had unloaded everything, she said, What do you really want, Paige? I said, I want Stephen back, without thinking. I was taken aback by the question, why? What do you mean, why? He's my husband. Yes, but why do you want him back? Is it because you truly love him and want to build a life together? Or is it because you're afraid of being alone? I was at a loss for words. For the first time, I was confronted with the notion that I didn't truly understand what love was, and that what I had mistakenly thought it was simply need, comfort, or the dread of being abandoned. There was no communication from Stephen for a week. I went back to work, but I was still not performing well. After I missed another deadline, my manager summoned me to her office. She inquired, What's going on with you lately? I thought about coming up with an excuse, but I was sick of lies. This isn't like you. My marriage is falling apart, I responded. It's my fault and I'm having trouble focusing. Her face softened a little with each sentence. I was placed on a performance improvement plan, which is the corporate equivalent of probation, 2 weeks later. I'm sorry to hear that, but I need to be clear. If your work doesn't improve, we'll have to take formal action. While aimlessly browsing social media on a Friday night, I came upon a picture shared by a mutual acquaintance. Stephen grinning next to an unfamiliar woman at a charity function. Their body language conveyed a sense of comfort and familiarity, even though they weren't touching or clearly a pair. I awoke the following morning to an email from Stephen's attorney. He was claiming infidelity as the reason for his divorce. Stephen was incredibly reasonable during the divorce process, so it wasn't because he was spiteful that it was harsh, but because it made me confront the truth about what I had done. I was called into my boss's office and fired 3 months after Stephen's departure. The humiliation was unbearable, even if the severance compensation was considerable and more than I deserved. I was drinking half a bottle of wine and wallowing in self-pity one evening when I checked Stephen's social media accounts. Once more, Elise appeared in pictures with him. The worst was the most recent, Stephen's unabashed, genuine devotion for her, an expression I couldn't recall ever seeing aimed at me. 6 months following Stephen's departure, the divorce was finalized. When I drove by our favorite restaurant on the day the final documents arrived, I noticed Stephen and Elise smiling over dinner at a window table. That's when I understood what Dr. Winters had been attempting to show me. I hadn't truly and selflessly loved Stephen. He gave me stability and status, and I loved the way he made me feel and what he could do for me. However, I had never really seen him and had never put his happiness ahead of my own whims and needs. I removed the last of Stephen's belongings from the house that evening, along with the shoebox of Jordan mementos I had concealed. I was going through pictures and ticket stubs when instead of the intense passion I had imagined, my relationship with Jordan was a poisonous cycle of emotional abuse that I had somehow managed to turn into a romantic tale. An unknown number rang on my phone. "Hello," was my response. "Paige, it's Jordan." I felt sick to my stomach. "New phone," he remarked nonchalantly. "How did you get this number?" "I blocked you. Look, I'm in town for a couple of days. Thought we could pick up where we left off." "No," I replied with firmness. "That's not going to happen." I saw Dr. Winters for the last time the following day. I had finally begun to recognize my patterns after months of therapy. The desire for approval, the dread of boredom, the propensity to romanticize the unattainable, and the tendency to undervalue the here and now. As our time was coming to an end, she inquired, "What's next for you?" Saying, "I'm moving. Fresh start, new city. I've got a job offer in Denver." "And what about relationships?" I thought to myself. "Not for a while. I need to figure out who I am first. Learn to be alone without being lonely." I wrote Stephen a letter the day before I left town, only admitting the truth without pleading for reconciliation or forgiveness. I accepted full responsibility for my conduct and offered no defenses or explanations. I apologized for how I had ended things and thanked him for the wonderful years. Elise seemed to value him in every way I should have, but didn't. So I wished him luck with her. Writing it felt like closing a chapter and taking the first step toward becoming someone who might one day deserve the type of love I'd so recklessly thrown away, even though I didn't expect or receive a response. I was thinking about something Dr. Winters had said in one of our sessions as I drove out of town, past all the monuments of my failed marriage. Our most painful failures often lead to the most profound progress. I prayed she was correct because I had failed miserably, and the sorrow was as great as the defeat itself. Now I only had to try to learn from it.